I didn't break the planet. It was this way when I found it, all right?
Everybody laughed when I first said I wanted to be a comedian. Well, they're not laughing now, are they?
You know why it's laminated, don't you? To catch the tears of joy.
It's a Celtic phoenix. People are thankfully being stupid again.
Welcome to Gurus of Comedy.
With your host, Dave Keeshan.
Welcome to Gurus of Comedy. I'm your host, Dave Keeshan, and with me today, all the way from Mother Russia, is Denis Nikolin. Good day, Dennis. How are you?
Hello, sir. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for taking my call today. I'm very excited to actually have someone all the way from Russia to talk about comedy.
My pleasure.
For the listeners, Dennis is performing for about 6-7 years now, and you say that you have made comedy in English an actual thing in Russia. So congratulations.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
And you performed all over the world, in 19 countries, and have done Edinburgh twice. I suppose out flying with everybody else, I imagine.
Of course.
And you've brought many headliners into Russia to perform, into Moscow.
Yeah. Guys from Europe, UK, America.
Cool. Good response, was there?
Oh, great. I mean, people here, they love exotic stuff, and English-speaking Russians and expats, they want this. They know stand-up comedy in English, the Western comedy, and they want it. They're craving for it.
Kind of brings us to our topic today. I'm fascinated by comedy all over the world, and I really feel like the stand-up technique is kind of a real late 20th century concoction that seems to have kind of come out of the US and has slowly kind of drifted into like the UK and then Australia and Ireland, but just because we all speak English. But I kind of find it interesting now in the format, the stand-up technique. Like for context, there was no stand-up in Ireland 20 years ago. It only kind of started here in the form that we'd all know about it, with open mics and people going and doing 5 minutes. That only really happened, about 20 years ago. And now it would be pretty much identical to what you'd find.
That's strange, Dave. That's strange about Ireland because your conditions are harsh. in Ireland.
Yeah, but we didn't really kind of go up on stage and talk about it. we just bottled it inside and hid away in a pub and drank it away. We didn't kind of really get out and try and realize it was like free therapy.
Same here.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I'm really interested to see how this format has arrived in Russia, because like the Russian style would not really necessarily be the same as the American style, for sure, but even just the Western style would be a bit different. So what's just been your experience with just getting English stand-up going in Russia?
Surprisingly, it went well. I was not the first person who brought it here, but I developed it because I grew up on Western comedy. I grew up on stand-up comedy and, love Ricky Gervais, Jimmy Carr, Robin Williams, and a bunch of others, many others. So due to the invention of internet...
I've heard of this thing,
yeah. That's a thing. That's a thing in Russia, too. A lot of people here, they, of course, learned about comedy, and when they recognized that there is stand-up in English, they were like, oh shit, and everybody the guys who went on stage, they tried the Western style of comedy, because Russian style of comedy is a bit different. The intonations are different, the language is different.
Well, obviously
we have different.
Well, let's just
idols.
go to that. Well, let's just start with that. Like what would be considered performance comedy in Russia before this stand-up style? Like, would people go on stage? Would it be like vaudeville? What would it be? What would be popular there?
Vaudeville is a gay word, so it was prohibited in USSR.
Okay.
So it was monologue artists, primarily satire when it was allowed, of course censored and checked many times. But we had wonderful artists who went on stage and they did monologues, they did sketches even by themselves. We had a great TV comedy and cinema comedies. So it grew. And during Perestroika in the 80s, the comedy thing started to change. And here we are, like about 12 years ago, stand-up came to Russia, and a lot of
Yeah, only that recently. Wow. Okay.
yeah, even younger than Ireland. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Wow. Like I was, we had a pre-record on this, and you kind of said to me you weren't too keen on going down the road of stereotypes, and I kind of said to you that like my exposure to Russians has been a bit limited, but I have worked with a few, and they were just a bit different. There would be two guys. They would go into a room and they would be shouting the hinges off the door and banging the walls. They were very shoddy walls. And then you'd come out and everybody would be like looking at them and say, "What on earth just happened in there? Are you okay?" And yeah, what's wrong? I says, "We having an argument in there?" And no, we're just having a discussion. I said, "What? That sounds like you're going to kill each other." I said, "No, that's how we have discussions in Russia, you know." I was like, "Really? Whoa." So I took me, like, that was probably my first exposure to these two guys. I got to know them a lot better and understood them a lot better after that. But it was just, that wouldn't work in Irish culture for sure, and probably wouldn't work in most Western cultures. Is
Really? I don't know. I thought. Well, I went to Scotland, and I haven't been to Ireland yet. But I witnessed that Scottish people, for example, they also can argue. Well, they also can talk in this kind of manner, mostly just banter.
But this is probably out and about. This wasn't in the workplace. This wasn't like day-to-day life. This seemed to be perfectly normal for him to be doing in the office for us.
But in Russia, I mean, I can't say that we constantly talk like that. I mean, we definitely vent like that. You should see our drivers. I mean, you should see many things that make us angry, and we come down after it quite easily. Like in families, everybody, well, not everybody, but they're shouting at each other, and then just calm down like 10 minutes later, and as if nothing happened, and no vodka required.
So no vodka. So does that kind of inform what stand-up is in Russia? Is that kind of the jumping off point? Just yelling. I got a problem with all you people.
Applaud! Give me a round of applause if you came here to hear stand up. Everybody's like, yeah, fuck you too. No, it's not like that. Unfortunately, I would love that kind of comedy.
A lot easier.
But it's stand up in Russia. It's developing and it's going through its I think teenage years, which is good. And we're touching so many topics. Like we have actually quite a big scene of female comedians, and it's I can't say that it's much different from in terms of topics from Western comedy. Everybody talks about their own life. Some people talk about politics, of course, not in a very easy way, so to speak. But yeah, we talk about everything.
Do you feel that there's any limits on discussing politics on stage? Is it just it's not worth the aggravation to bring it up, or it doesn't seem to stop anybody?
Well, I think it's like having half of the room. Imagine having half of the room with conservative supporters, talking about like Britain, and liberals, right? Left and right. And when you say from stage in Russia that, in Britain that, like conservatives, blah, 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 it's bad. And what do you think conservatives would say? That they would start arguing, they would be pissed. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point, right?
No, yeah, definitely. Or I'd be more if there's any kind of limits on what the government thinks acceptable, or is there any kind of censorship?
No, I mean, the government, of course, tries to, as long as you're under radar, nobody cares.
Right.
Actually, like what you say in bars, on stage, somewhere else, no one cares. On TV, it's censored.
Okay, that would be probably similar here. Pretty much anything that gets said in a club or a pub, if it's quiet enough, you never hear about it. But yeah, if someone is on TV and they're saying something, they might get a lot more coverage, and it might get an ear bashing from political types.
Yep, but you gotta understand that, as you said, the conditions are different in Russia, and the humor, our humor, like jokes and anecdotes, they're more based on inevitability of shitty things. because we're constantly surviving here different things like revolutions, wars, changing regimes, and it's basically, psychologically, we constantly stare into abyss. And it's just an abyss. It's not a metaphor. It's just an abyss, So that's and we joke about it. We can't not joke about it. We can't avoid it because Russia is a 1,000-year perpetual catastrophe on a planetary scale, and we, as natives, we feel it more than anybody else. But what can we do? We just, yeah, all right, you know, let's just do jokes, and now we can do stand up, and
Well, that
yeah.
sounds like stand up everywhere. Really, it's whatever is the problem of place you're in, just giving people.
Now you just now you just like brought me down from the peak, from my monologue. Just yeah, but it's everywhere. Like everywhere else is the same. Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Well,
It was it was my high moment, of the day. And you just destroyed me.
Well, I think the problem. Well, this is kind of what I'm trying to figure out and investigate, because like if I particularly want to go to, let's say, countries like India or Bangladesh, where there's like deprivations there, and it's like, well, what's humor there like? I think
Oh yeah.
everybody kind of, I think there's a scale in life. There's the best thing that happens to you and the worst thing that happens to you, and you scale everything between those two, and that's where you talk to. It just so happens that the scales are different in different countries. So something you might think is terrible in a Western country, could be a fantastic thing in a more developing country. It's like, oh, my daddy didn't get me a pony when I turned sweet 16. It's like, so, but ultimately,
You know that in China they actually can they are closing clubs which don't deliver like their sets and who's performing, so they can censor it. If you don't do it, they're gonna close you. If they find out that you joke about who, then you get closed. That's terrible, I think.
I think it is, but like, that does speak to the regime that seems to be set up in China, where they seem to try and control the message every which way, and anything that's the sentient message, even if it's just for tone, I think they're trying to control. Which I think you'll find everywhere, that there will be the official performing, and then there'll probably be some type of underground. I think that was true in Russia, even. Like, we all heard stories about, black market blue jeans and things being snuck into Russia, into the USSR, Can't stop those blue jeans.
I'm in those blue jeans right now. They're good blue jeans. They serve me for 30 years now, Like, I've been wearing them since I was 1.
Yeah, there you go. Handed down from your father's 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 father.
Yeah, or somebody else's fathers. But I want kind of like to return to those sweet years in the 90s, not in terms of criminal activity or wars, but the style of comedy. I was a kid back then, so I couldn't watch everything or follow it, everything or understand everything. But recently, I decided to explore it more, what we had in the early 90s, late 80s. And I must tell you, I was utterly surprised, because our comedy shows on TV, they were like British TV shows, piece of, what was it called? Like Laurie and Fry, Monty Python, of course. And it was so surreal and absurd, just like your TV shows. Great Britain TV shows. Yeah, and it was in Russia.
This was post-Soviet, was it? This is the content that was in the new Russia.
Like 89 till 99, I think. Like, we had absolutely, like, nowadays nobody would do something like that. Nobody would make parodies like that. Nobody would speak like that. Nobody would break the reality like they did. Those comedians who were experimenting, and they were nailing it. Because we all laughed. It was great satire. It was great parodies. They were great comics in general, and the decorations, the outfits, everything. It was, I tell you, just like TV shows of the West, surreal ones. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've seen an analysis of what Monty Python was part of, which was sort of what the Beatles were, which was the 60s, which was kind of Britain coming out of the Second World War rationing. They finally were no longer broke, and they were beginning to express themselves again. And it was
Yeah.
that kind of, it wasn't quite the repression of the, the communist system that maybe Russians experienced, but they were still, they couldn't do stuff, they couldn't put stuff out. And particularly the John Cleese character of the anti-authoritarian, he kind of was that kind of repressed guy who exploded all the time. Definitely seemed to, you couldn't have done that 5 years earlier. It just wouldn't have been allowed. And I think that's kind of why it's still considered a high watermark of the time. And nothing's like that has kind of come along since.
It's freedom.
Because
it's freedom.
It's coming out. So I'm kind of curious. I'm wondering if that's kind of where maybe that's what happened in this, Russia that came out of the USSR, that all those people had lived under kind of a suppression, and then they were allowed to express themselves. And it was like 20, 30 years of stuff building kind of came out.
Yeah. What do you think the comedy is in Africa?
That is a good question. I would like to know.
Me too. I have no idea what's going on there, and I think that would be.
That's a great question. I'm going to go and find out. I can't answer that right now. That would be a project for me to do.
Go ahead. You can thank me later.
I will.
I mean, not South Africa. That's quite obvious. But I mean, like the North Africa, those countries who are, in constant, war or something, or hunger, famine.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely kind of the post-colonial chickens are coming home to roost in a lot of countries at the moment. So I think, what happened in Africa under the British Empire is kind of starting to, finally people are going, we did what now? And it's like, yeah, you did it for hundreds of years. No, come on. I know.
Yeah.
So they probably, like, one of the great lines about Australia. It's like it's a fairly famous country, but Bill Bryson, like a lot of comedians have covered this, but in the 60s, one of the prime ministers, Harold Holt, went for a swim one day and didn't come back. He drowned, and that's and one of the jokes is there's a swimming pool in Melbourne named after him. But the greater point is that a country with 20 million people, well, maybe they only had about 15 at the time, lost a prime minister, and no one on the planet heard anything about it. It was like such a communication was so bad back in the 60s that even a country losing a prime minister just wasn't really well reported. And I imagine, like, you go into countries like, Africa, you sort of said, like, with Africa, the because of the way the maps are, Africa looks smaller than it is relative to other countries, but it's something like you could cram all of all of the Americas into the space of Africa and still have space left over. It's a massive, with lots of people and loads of stories.
Oh yeah, but so basically in Australia, it's good to have sharks if you're competition. Basically, you don't need to hire like a killer, Just let the prime minister swim.
All you Russians always like trying to figure out how to hire killers. It's always the first thing. No, in Australia, it's just animals do it for you. If it's not sharks, it's snakes. It's not snakes, it's spiders.
It's just in our culture. I mean, it's our culture. We have to respect it.
Give me a bit of a background in what setting up an English comedy club in Moscow is like, and what was hard, what was easy, and what were things you weren't expecting about doing that at all?
I think the hardest thing was not even bringing people in. The hardest thing was developing as comedians, as good comedians, the material. Obviously, the language also, an important thing. And being funny is also an important thing. So I think for every
lies. You never have to be funny.
Yeah, of course. You just need to know people, obviously. And all the comics here in Moscow and St. Petersburg, they had to struggle a little bit, but they were all into it. They were like, "Oh, stand up in English. Damn it, I want to," And I mean, they became comics. They were just some regular people before that who just knew English. And I think for the audience to get used to people actually struggling on stage I want to thank all those people who actually started coming to our shows where we were not funny at all, and they kept coming until, because you can't do comedy without the audience. And
Oh
I'm super
no,
grateful to those people.
that's not true. I perform to no audiences. Yeah, so one person. You're going on.
Oh,
You're going on.
oh, Fringe, man! You're talking about Fringe, of course. It's every show there is one person. Sometimes you have no people, but obviously, easiest thing, I don't know. There were no easy thing, I'd say, in the beginning, especially because you also have to find venues who are like stand up in English. What the hell is that? Like, what the hell is English?
Would there be a stand-up scene in Moscow now in Russia too, though? In Russian too, as well?
Oh, we have. So I have my organization, and we have several, like kind of spin-offs, so to speak. No, several organizations who do stand-up in English in Moscow and St. Petersburg. One in St. Petersburg, and I think, counting me, I think three right now active in Moscow. And there are people actually like in Siberia who would love to have English comics there, like our Australian guy,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, Australian guy. He went all the way to, I think, Irkutsk. It's near Baikal. He did, I think, 1 hour there, and people loved it because, and not only he's good, but it's just wow, comedy in English. So apparently they speak English in Siberia.
Okay.
So yeah.
But sorry, but is there a kind of a tradition now in Russia of a Russian stand-up? So a performed in Russian, and
Yeah,
what
of course.
and what is that like? Like how popular is that?
Oh, it's booming, It's I think it's similar to skateboarding in 90s, something like that, or being a musician. Everybody wanted to be a musician in early 2000s, but right now everybody's like, "Oh, you're a comedian." No, I'm not gonna date you. Yeah, everybody wants to try that at least once. It's good therapy for somebody, but yeah, everybody looks up to popular comedians on TV and across the country, and obviously most of the people have an opinion they want to express, and everybody's in this. I think I would say hundreds of thousands of at least 100,000 comedians right now, or comics, in general.
In Russia.
Yeah, maybe more. I mean, I think it's about like several thousand in Moscow.
Okay.
Just in Moscow, I think so.
All right. So there's no point asking for any. Can I get 5 minutes anywhere?
No, actually, if you come over and you learn some, did you know, by the way, that Eddie Izzard, he performs in native language?
Yeah, that's his thing. He tries. I think French was his big one. Mm-hmm.
And we spoke a little bit, and he actually, I think 7 years or 6 years before I like, he performed in Russia. It wasn't like a full room show, and it had audio translation, but he performed in English. But I asked him like, when are you gonna come back to Russia? And he said, until I learn Russian. And I'm like, okay, see you in 10 years then, or maybe 20.
Or never. Jesus.
Yeah.
Russians, because I've a bit of Russian. I think I was telling you, like, I used to watch a lot of movies as kids, so I learned German from Die Hard. So she sends Finster, shoot the glass, and nur ein Mann is only one man. But but my go-to always was the Hunt Red October for Russian. So it was Nu Paruski. You speak Russian?
Paruski, yeah, I do speak Russian, yeah.
And then the other one was Stave Atavpakoye, which it took me 15 years to find out was actually badly translated into Russian. It's actually Stave Miafpakoye, which means
leave me alone.
Yes, leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. It took me 15 years to find that out. So
that's cool. No, if you come over here and you learn your like 3 minute set in Russian, like, or 2 minute set, everybody would be amazed actually, just because you're from another country. We are very welcoming actually, and you can judge it by World Cup in 2018. we do love foreigners. I mean, 50-50, but yeah, everybody loved that event all over Russia. Finally we learned there are some other people in this world.
okay, there's a few words,
Yeah, so if you want to learn a bit of Russian and come over here,
Cool.
you can embarrass yourself in front of non English speaking audience.
Okay, well that's a step up from embarrassing myself in front of English speaking audiences.
Yeah, but then we're gonna have a proper show in English. No worries.
Oh, okay. So what's the future then? What do you see as the next 5 years in comedy in Russia?
I have a question for you then. Like, how do you see next 5 months in the whole world?
Jesus, that's why I'm trying to skip over it. That little problem that in the next 5 that gets solved by, I don't know, aliens, and then you just, it's like those TV
I don't
shows.
think so, man. I think aliens would see that we have a virus. They're like, oh, fuck that shit.
We'll wait until they clean themselves out. Yeah, no. The next 5 months, particularly in Ireland, we've had quite a decent lockdown period.
Yeah,
which means that practically no live stand up, going to be happening in this country until the new year, until 2021.
in Russia they're opening doors in August here, like massive events, so to speak. But they're promising the second wave in autumn, and I mean the death count is still there, like people dying from COVID here, and I don't know. I mean, how can
my problem with the COVID-19 and a comedian isn't so much the transmission risk; it's more the audience. Like, would an audience be comfortable going into a cellar all closely packed together? I think that even after like the risk has gone away, I think there'll be a psychological impact that people will be very uncomfortable, going into an environment, the classic comedy stand-up environment is probably one of the worst places for it, and I think it'll be a long time before people are really going back into that space in decent enough numbers.
I mean, I will try masks, like maybe it would work performing in gloves and masks, an audience would be in masks. I don't know, but in general, yeah, it's a bad situation. But I mean, Russian comedians, they're gonna have everything open. Like people would come there probably. I don't know. We have to see in August. I think English-speaking audience here is more cautious. I presume because they're more a bit more intelligent, I'd say, like a bit more into international news. No, I mean, but they know more about, like, they don't listen to propaganda that much.
Okay. Well, that's a fair point. Yeah.
So I don't know. We gotta try, but I don't know, man.
So you're not gonna.
I myself, if that doesn't work, like I definitely will not perform in Zoom, but I'll just go into sketches. I'll just record sketches and do that,
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, I think people are finding. I mean, I personally went down a bit of the podcast route to just at least pull some information together, but I find the Zoom path a bit strange. Like, stand up is so much about feedback, and I just don't know what type of feedback you really get from Zoom if it's the same.
Yeah, and it's two different things. Performing in Zoom for the audience, for an audience. And watching, Netflix special, because like watching some comedians on the internet is different. Like you see the reaction of the audience, like you laugh yourself, but as an artist, you need to express yourself and you need to feel the energy back. Like otherwise, we're talking right now, but imagine me just doing my jokes. And it wouldn't be a conversation. It's just like 1 hour of somebody telling jokes, and you would listen to it. I don't know. It's a bizarre thing. I think virtual reality could solve this problem, but still, I don't know. It's it's the future, I guess.
Okay, so go back to my original question. 5 years from now, we've solved this COVID thing and whatever else. The Chinese have a sense of humor again.
I think. Maybe you're asking about Russia or
I'm curious in Russia. Yeah.
I think it would be the comedy would be better. Topics would be explored more. Comedians would find their own voices, because right now it's a copy of a copy of a copy. I'd say it's my own opinion. It's very weird to see Russians trying to copy George Carlin. It's just so fucking weird, especially when the young guys try to do it. It's like, you're 20, like, stop that.
My big one is Bill Hicks. Everyone thinks Bill Hicks was.
Yeah.
Well, I think Bill Hicks is a great comedian, but he was Bill. He was himself.
Obviously.
But you kind of
you can't copy him.
But everyone thinks that's comedy. That's the style, and you're like, no, stop doing that. Stop doing it.
No, yeah, you have to develop your own voice.
Yeah.
And in Russia, of course, since we have only few popular comedians, like everybody tries to copy them.
Of course, yeah.
And yeah, obviously. So I think in 5 years, people will grow, definitely.
Okay.
And yeah, so I think it would be better if we don't close the borders. Of course, it would be even better for English comedy here, and we could bring more like big star comedians, not only like one-offs like Jim Gaffigan or like those brought 7 years ago when it wasn't even a thing here. So and maybe in other cities too. I mean, everybody wants to. Every single comedian, Western comedian, wants to travel Russia. It's like a checklist, They don't even care if they paid. Like I remember Craig Campbell, if you know this guy. Like he was just like, I don't care if I earn money or not. I want to perform in Russia. I want to do that. As many cities as I can. No, you can only do Moscow. All right, but everybody. I was talking to one Canadian comedian, and he said, like, I want to do St. Petersburg because my ancestors were from there. I want to do Moscow. I want to do a bunch of small cities and yada yada. And I thought, well, that's a great market right there. But also, like, you, as an audience, as a Russian, I would love, to see more exotic performers, And like outside of Moscow, they don't have much entertainment there, So that would definitely be a good thing for people to see, translated or not.
Okay, so it sounds to me like you're saying the future's bright.
I try to tell that myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if anyone is looking for gigs, Russia's the place to go. So
yeah.
It's a bit longer than the 5-hour drives I used to do, but
Oh, you need a visa too, man. It's just
I need to get a comedian visa. Could you get a special
comedian visa? Like, well, not a comedian visa, just a working visa in general. But still, like, it's a paperwork. But and it's also always like a roulette. I mean, it's been good so far. So far, so good. But you never know what's going to happen in Russia in the next 5 days.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, Denis. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. And thanks for taking time out all the way from Moscow Standard Time, which turns out to be 2 hours, not 3 hours. You have anything you want to promote? You have a special coming up as a call?
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I have my first comedy special, and I'm going to release it by the end of the month. It's called Bad Russian. And it's going to be on YouTube, IGTV and Instagram, but mostly YouTube. So, check out for that. I'll be very, very delighted.
You are on Twitter and Instagram as Russian Comedian, is it?
Yeah, everywhere is Russian Comedian. Russian Comedian on Facebook, Russian Comedian on Instagram. Yeah, but my name is Denis Nikolin, just by the way. So
Denis Nikolin. And I've been your host, Dave Keeshan. This has been Gurus of Comedy. We are on all the socials. Give us a iTunes 5 stars. Desperate for one of those, please. And we will talk to you again. Goodbye.
Goodbye.